The agenda this week assessed efforts to halt escalating levels of diabetes in Canada. Heard some cross-border perspective on the state of relations between Canada, the U.S. and Mexico. And prepped for Sunday's big Grey Cup game with a conversation with the Commissioner of the Canadian Football League. The agenda's Week in Review now begins with a red line debate about education vouchers.
OISE every year does
It's the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education.
Does an annual survey and has since '78 or whatever. It asked the Canadian public to give a grade. We've gone down. Only 8% of Canadian or Ontarians give an A to the public school system. There are some serious concerns in terms of our education as a whole. And I don't think this is about independent is better than public and public. There are good and bad schools in every one of those systems, and we can cherry pick one example or the other. I think what needs to drive this discussion is to say, okay, what are the foundations? And I think parental input and choice and involvement at a school level is one of the drivers, and one of the ways that happens, independent schools, because today they require tuition and all the rest, they're market-driven in terms of a sensitivity. If you're the administrator of an independent school, you account to a board of parents, and you're looking at enrollment for next year, and there is a very real market mechanism to keep you responsible to your constituency.
Sure. Annie, go ahead.
This is about the parent piece, and I think parents are wonderful. I am a parent. I'm not, denigrating parents at all. But I think that the problem with sort of equating some kind of sort of causal thing, that what we need is a private system or more choice in a way to make the public system better. I don't think there's any evidence of that. And we are an organization that is fighting hard to think about, what is the purpose, what's the future of public education, and how does it need to change? And I think that the thing that's important about the parent piece in this is that overall, when you look internationally, it's the parents with the capacity to choose who choose, first of all. So you've already got a parent who knows enough about the system, is thinking about it in a certain way. And so then so parents who don't have the capacity to choose for whatever reason, tough luck on them and their kids. And I think it shouldn't be like that. And I think parents are incredibly important, but not necessarily experts either. And that we have to make sure that we are fighting to support, change, alter, evolve, and it's not very easy to evolve, I'll definitely give it that, the public system so that children can go to it no matter what their parents' way of thinking is in a way, so that we're making sure that they're educated very, very well.
Okay, let me read this.
And I think that this takes away, in a way, from what we need to be doing in the public education
Let me read
system.
this quote. I get emails from time to time from a fella who doesn't want his name mentioned, but he's got a point of view. Let's put it that way. We have an educational system, he writes, that serves the interests of mediocre teachers, the good ones would get raises, their unions, a massive bureaucracy, and the politicians that seek their votes. Singapore was a third world country when you were born, meaning me, and it has passed Canada in every international comparison. Vouchers have introduced competition into education in Sweden, and the result has been that even the traditional public schools have picked up their socks because of competition from privatized, publicly funded with vouchers, schools. Question: are things so good in the province of Ontario today that vouchers aren't worth trying?
I think they aren't worth trying.
Yeah.
I think it's important to look at more than a popularity contest when we're assessing how our school system's doing. And it's easy to put down your own school or put down the school system here. But by most international measures, Ontario is a very successful school system, which needs to do better. And there's lots of room for excelling, I think. I'm concerned, the experience in Chile has been that once you start down the path, it is one that it's hard to reverse when the government, or in Sweden, where the government's decided this isn't working, you start building constituencies.
They did decide in Chile and Sweden, oops,
they both
this was
wanted
a bad
to fix
idea.
it, and they found it hard to fix.
Yeah,
so it's not one of those little experiments that
well, let me try this.
I
got a minute left here. I got a minute. Barb, this for you. The Ford government has certainly indicated that it is prepared to tick some people off when they think they're right and they think other people are wrong. I think of the debate over how to make Toronto City Council smaller, environmentalists, French language service supporters, universities, basic income proponents, they've made a lot of decisions that have angered a lot of people. Can you imagine Premier Ford allowing some experimentation on this and really ticking off a lot of people in the public education system?
There is a province-wide education consultation going on, and parents and stakeholders are being encouraged to participate in that consultation and to let the government know what they feel is needed in the education system. Independent school parents are going to be filling that out too. They're part of this landscape as well. They're part of the province with respect to the fact that they're voters. So yeah, they're going to give their say as well. And I'm sure some of them are going to share those ideas. You look at the education budgets, every year since 1973, we're spending more and more on education, and we're seeing fewer and less outcomes. We're behind Alberta, we're behind BC in many of the test scorings.
I know you want to continue this, but we got to go.
Okay, so I think Doug Ford is interested in innovating. He's not interested in tinkering with education.
You have a bit of an unorthodox approach at your clinic to dealing with type 2 diabetes. What do you do?
Well, what we do is really focus on the obesity part of it, which we recognize drives the type 2 diabetes. So if really the problem is obesity, you got to treat that. So what we're bringing is not the newest technology. We're actually bringing literally the oldest dietary intervention known to humanity, which is intermittent fasting. So really all it is a period of time that you don't eat. And people always think it's really bad, but literally every major religion in the world does it. As physicians, I prescribe it all the time. If somebody needs to do a colonoscopy, they need to go for surgery, they need to fast. If they do fasting blood work, they need to fast. We know that if you don't eat, your blood sugar will go down. So why can't we use that in a therapeutic manner? You don't eat, your blood sugar goes down, all of a sudden you don't need to take that drug anymore.
You don't eat for how long?
This is where we have to individualize it. So normal fasting periods should be about 12 to 14 hours between dinner and breakfast. So you can push it to 16 or even 24 hours. You need to always consult your doctor, make sure you're doing it safely, adjust your medications. But now you have an intervention which is 100% natural, which has been done for thousands of years, that can actually let your body simply use up the sugar. We all know if you don't eat, your blood sugar drops. Well, that's great. That's actually the perfect thing we want to do. And you're letting your body do all the work rather than using exogenous medications and so on. So
exogenous?
Outside the body, like drugs and so on. And that's where we've treated thousands of patients, and we see diabetes reversal all the time. Almost every single day I walk in the door, there's somebody who's taking less medication, they're off their insulin. And again, we're simply attacking the root cause of the problem, which is the obesity.
But if you are obese, obviously this isn't the case for everybody, but in a lot of people, it's because they eat too much. How motivated or how difficult is it to get patients to go 16 hours without eating?
It's not easy. It's not fun. I'd rather eat donuts myself. But the point is that as a physician, my job is not to tell people what they can and can't do. My job is to tell them what they can do to make themselves better. Don't get me wrong, not everybody will do it, but those people that do it see a benefit.
So Steve, let me jump in here. So the aim is to reduce nutrient intake, right? And, many diets work. The ideal diet would be to reduce portion size, to eat 3 healthy meals a day.
You think that's better than fasting?
Well, it depends what you mean by better. People can adhere to simple rules. So in a low carbohydrate diet, that's a simple rule. I don't eat carbs and I lose weight. Well, because if you don't eat carbs, you're going to reduce your total caloric intake. Intermittent fasting. At the end, you eat less calories per 24 hours. Is it sustainable for a long period? What are the long-term outcomes of that kind of approach? That hasn't been studied yet. But things like Weight Watchers and other plans, they're very balanced, nutritionally sound interventions that try and focus on reducing portion size and caloric intake. A very difficult thing for people to do in our society because we're surrounded by these signals. We're surrounded by fast food that's cheap, and that's one of the biggest problems. So the smoking sort of strategy is a good idea, but stopping smoking, which we do by rules, like you can't smoke in your office, you can't smoke here, is much simpler than changing that common, enjoyable, socially appropriate thing that we love to do is going to eat.
Well, two things I'd like to add to this. One is that the best diet is a healthy eating pattern that a person can sustain. So that might be different for me than it is for you, and there is certainly no one-size-fits-all for a healthy eating pattern.
But it sounds to me like you're saying fasting is not a
It's not a
long-term
panacea.
sustainable approach.
Oh, it certainly is for some people, but it's certainly not for others.
Okay.
And there are other healthy eating patterns that might be better suited for different individuals, and those work for those individuals. So there's no magic diet here that works for everybody in all circumstances. The other thing that I want to do is just take the focus off the individual for a moment. The food environment currently promotes unhealthy eating. We bombard our children with advertisements to eat nutrient-poor, highly processed foods.
Soda pop, fast food, junk food. Right.
And it's and for those of us in families where it's both parents working, it's really hard to get healthy foods on the table every night. So we live in an environment where we encourage highly processed fast foods, and we need to change that. Relying on the individual to make choices every single time, when we make it harder to eat healthy, and it easier to eat unhealthy, that's where we need to change. This food environment needs to change.
Can I get you now to speak to this issue of how sustainable your approach is?
Yeah, and what we're talking about, I actually think we're all on the same page here, is we're providing options for people. That is an option that a lot of people haven't considered before, which is using fasting as a therapeutic dietary strategy. And it's simply a tool in your tool belt. You don't have to use it. You can if you want. I mean, we have patients in our clinic who are 5-6 years and they've reversed their diabetes. They still maintain a certain amount of fasting. The point is that fasting, the word is sort of a dirty word, but the very word breakfast, it's the meal that breaks your fast. What it acknowledges is that fasting is a part of everyday life. That is, there's a period that you should feed, and there's a period that you should fast, and that's normal.
Let's review the tariffs on steel and aluminum that President Trump imposed on Canada earlier this year. And a couple of weeks ago, you tweeted, or actually not even, just actually a few days ago, you tweeted the following. Message to the new members of Congress. Real Donald Trump has weaponized trade via tariffs. The Constitution, Article 1, gives you, the Congress, authority over foreign trade. Please immediately rein in the abuse of tariffs on allies in the name of national security. Why'd you do that?
So it's important. Prior to the Democrats taking control, which is going to happen just after January 1st, prior to that, the Republicans have been head nodders for whatever Donald Trump did. And so whether you're in the Congress and the House or the Senate, they weren't taking, I think, the responsibilities of the Constitution. These tariffs are a part of an arcane provision within a trade act that was passed in 1962. And the original members of Congress during that time, as I look back on it, were fearful that the president would potentially abuse his authority and use these inappropriately. I think the president has weaponized trade, and he's weaponized it through tariffs.
But it's unusual for a former diplomat to get so out there against, you know, a succeeding administration, and yet you've done that. How come?
I think that this president and his administration is the most divisive administration that we may have ever had in the history of the country, at least in all of our lifetimes. It's morally and ethically bankrupt, and it is creating hate not only within the United States. By the way, hate crimes have increased 31% domestically, as tracked by the FBI, since he started running for office. But he's taking it out on our best friend and our ally and our next door neighbor and trading partner, Canada. And so I think that it's all of our responsibilities to stand up for this relationship. And I take this very seriously, having just served here under the Obama administration. But the relationship is nonpartisan. The relationship shouldn't depend upon, you know, which party's in power. But everybody is giving in to his language and style, and I know I wasn't going to stand for it.
Well, clearly you're not giving in on that, and I wonder if you fear any consequences because of that. I guess in one respect, people could say you're a little too sweet on Canada and you're not pro-American enough. Anybody who, you know, is critical of this administration runs into that kind of criticism. or beyond. Do you worry about that?
I'm an American. I'm pro-America, but it's in the United States' singular best interest to have very strong partners and allies in the world. And we have no better friend, no better ally, no better trading partner than Canada. People in America love Canadians, and we love doing business with you. You're our best trading partner. We vacationed here. We share so much together, family. So I'm not concerned long-term about the U.S.-Canada relationship. I am deeply concerned about the language and style coming out of the White House.
Can I just pick up on that word vacation? There were a number of people in this country who, for better or for worse, decided this past summer, for example, not to vacation in the United States because they were upset with some of the rhetoric coming out of the Oval Office and so on. What's your take on that?
For me, it's disappointing, but I understand it. Look, if somebody poked my president or my country in a way internationally, I would be very patriotic and very understanding. That being said, by not traveling and what you're doing is you're not really hurting Donald Trump. You're hurting these small business owners. You're hurting your family's opportunity to have a good experience. And so I think that hopefully, after this administration is long gone, or they correct their language, which they don't seem to be doing right now, that we can, get back to normalcy.
Dr. Seada, you're one of the very few people I've met who has met Donald Trump, who has talked to Donald Trump, and who has a sense of him, both, let's stick to the script here, as a negotiator. He's all about the art of the deal. Do you think he's a good negotiator?
Well, I think so, just as Canadians also are, because when you negotiate, you really have to face the counterpart with a clear message that you are serious, that you are willing to go all the way. He's a very tough negotiator. He really instills fear in you, and that's important.
Is that a good thing?
That's a good thing. I think you have to do two things that are almost contradictory. You have to make the counterpart, I don't call it opponent, but the counterpart, understand that you are willing or needing to go all the way, but at the same time, you need to instill confidence, a sense of honor and trust, and work together. The way I put it is that you have to construe things in such a way that the two sides of negotiators create a single team.
But let me ask you about that.
A single team whose job is to see the whole thing through.
I understand that, but which is why I'm going to follow up with this question. There were numerous times during the course of the negotiations when the President of the United States personally attacked the Prime Minister of Canada or personally attacked Chrystia Freeland, Canada's foreign minister.
Also, yeah.
There were times over the past couple of years where the President of the United States has said some horrible things about Mexicans. They're rapists, they're murderers, they're this and that, and they want to build a wall and charge you guys for the privilege of having that wall built. Were there no moments in those negotiations where you thought to yourself, this guy's off his rocker, and we can't negotiate with somebody who talks like this?
Yeah, well, you have to keep your calm and say, well, whether we are rapists or not, that has nothing to do with this negotiation. I'm sitting here to negotiate what we have to negotiate.
And you could put that aside?
You have to put it aside. You have to, and we ended up creating trust and creating a fluid atmosphere where key planks of the American position initiative were changed. If you think of all the poison pills in negotiation, the major things, Canada and Mexico got away with a pretty good deal in terms of them. The expectation was that it would be nothing for Canada in dairy. In the end, I'm not going to judge for you, but it's probably 50-50. Nothing for Canada on Chapter 19, which is a big
dispute settlement.
Dispute settlement, a big political totem created by former Prime Minister Mulroney, and it was preserved pretty much intact. For Mexico, there were awful things like the strong proposal to have seasonal tariffs, so that when Americans are in season producing and collecting tomatoes, you raise the barrier on tomatoes. But come on, we are both in the Northern Hemisphere. It's the same season. So all these things were terrible, not to mention Chapter 20, which is also a dispute settlement that they wanted to make voluntary. You could veto an adverse ruling. And the biggest of all, the sunset clause. This is going to end if I wanted to end in 5 years. All of those were changed fully or partially in directions that we preferred. I think we did pretty well, you and I.
Football's a violent game. It has to be, but I presume you want it to be as safe a violent game as it can be?
Yeah, and that's what all these efforts are about. Actually, Steve, I would tell you that I think we are, to some degree, living in the echo of a different time in sports, not in football, but in sports. You know, think about hockey as an example in the 70s. The Broad Street Bullies, I mean, 1972, Phil Esposito, the two-hand chop on Karlamov. I mean,
that was Bobby Clark who did that.
Oh, Bobby Clark, sorry. But in the world of sports, I believe the 70s and 80s were a particularly violent time. The highlights we showed on our networks were usually the ones of the biggest collisions in sport.
As an ex-player, you know, you may have had some experience with this, and we're talking head injuries right now. Okay. And here's how the Canadian press last year reported on some of your first responses to the issues of head injuries. The CFL may have a new commissioner, but the league's position on whether football head injuries are linked to brain disease hasn't changed. There isn't enough evidence to confirm the connection. We know there are football players that have had CTE, said Ambrosi, that's you. It's a terrible thing that we're not going to dispute. We have to follow the science, and the science is inconclusive. The cause and effect is unclear. It just simply is. It's not a position the NFL shares. In March 2016, Jeff Miller, the NFL's top health and safety officer, acknowledged the link during a discussion on concussions convened by the U.S. Congress. It marked the first time a senior league official conceded football's connection to chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE. How come the NFL can go there, but you can't?
So, Steve, the other side of the NFL story is that the NFL actually rescinded that statement that they made in Congress. They actually clarified that statement after the fact.
I bet the lawyers made them do that, but the VP for Health was pretty clear about it.
So here's the good news. The good news is that maybe even the phrase "good news" is inappropriate, but for me, it's a journey. I think what I'd say is we're not afraid of the truth, Steve. We're running towards the truth.
That's not what the lawyers say, Commissioner, I have to tell you. They say that you don't want to make the acknowledgement because you're afraid of getting
I'll tell you
sued.
why, because I just attended a conference in London just 2 weeks ago, and I was listening to some of the foremost experts in the world who are telling us that they don't know. These are brain scientists. These are remarkably well-respected scientists from around the world who are saying they don't know. There's so much more that we have to learn about the issue. Look, there are studies out there that have reached that conclusion. There are studies out there that have said that conclusion is incorrect. Dr. Lily Naz-Haradi, who wrote us, there was an article here in the newspaper, in the Star, I believe, a few months ago, where she chronicled a woman who had no history of sports, no history of car collisions, anything.
Got CT.
And she has CT. And Dr. Hazarati, who's an amazing scientist, said, we don't know.
And that is the Agenda's Week in Review for this Friday, November 23rd, 2018. You can see all of those conversations in their entirety at tvo.org, or they're on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/theagenda, and on our Twitter feed at twitter.com/theagenda.
The Agenda with Steve Bacon is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.